I'm Marcia Kavanaugh. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, Donald Trump's big week is forcing local Republicans nationwide to make tough choices about allegiances in the presidential election. In Louisiana, the situation comes about as officials are otherwise preoccupied with the legislative session and the Senate election. We'll look at these stories tonight, as well as global warming from a different geographic perspective, as well as a reporter's firsthand experience covering violence in the streets. There will be 2 horses in tomorrow's Kentucky Derby that might have railbirds asking, "Who dat?" At the gate for us are tonight's Informed Sources. Errol, Laborde, producer of Informed Sources. Jeremy Alford, publisher, LawPolitics.com. Eric Paulsen, reporter and anchor, WWL-TV Channel 4. And Steve Beatty, editor, The Lens. We're going to go over to Errol first, just for a little bit of history about sinkholes that have been in the news following Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah, at last count, there were 3 sinkholes working in New Orleans now, and usually there haven't been any that we've been aware, and they all come in the same time, and they're all cause for some kind of a water flow or something like the one in Lakeview. The Sewage and Water Board says because of like a sewage leak, and so something goes on that undermines what's above. But the most interesting, of course, is the one downtown with where the tunnel was built. First of all, people never built tunnels in New Orleans. I mean, that's why you have graves, above ground, because of the low water table, and to build a tunnel by the river. And so this was done in the 1960s when people were convinced that technology allowed for that. And it was done in preparation for the Riverfront Expressway, which of course became a big controversy. And I was talking to one of the champions in terms of beating back the expressway was a man named Bill Bohr, and I was asking him the other night, because he remembered that time period. I said, Bill, why did they build a tunnel which is part of the expressway when the expressway wasn't approved yet? I mean, you'd think that had been like the last step rather than the first step. And he thought it was more or less like a preemptive measure that the council was trying to take, that if they built a tunnel, then the rest would follow.
Because the council wanted it.
Yeah,
the council wanted it. All the civic leaders wanted it. Everybody thought it was a good idea, to move commerce along the riverfront. Cities around the country were doing that. And so, there were all these people, these tree huggers and all that, who were complaining about it, but they thought it would be a good move that would hasten it. And in fact, from Bohr's interpretation, he thought it actually hurt the cause because it looked like that they were being just a little bit too aggressive on it. And so ultimately, it was stopped under the Nixon administration, Secretary John Volpe. And so New Orleans' one tunnel was just left to stand there. It was used for parking for Harris, and it's never caused any trouble until the last couple of weeks. But it was definitely a tunnel that shouldn't have been built. It cost the city millions of dollars back then, and it'll cost the city millions of dollars again to fix.
Right, and it's going to take, about 6 months to fix, and that tunnel just went under Canal Street, and it was going to go under, was the River Gate at that time.
It was going to connect. It was going to connect,
Well, they use part of it for Harris now.
Right, they use this for parking. But
and they say those walls are nice and solid, that they were more solidly built than what would have been the entry and the exit for the...
But there were 2 things you never built in New Orleans. You never built tunnels, and you never built buildings that were really, really high. Now, with the technology, started to allow high buildings, and One Shell Square broke that barrier. But with tunnels, that's as far as it got, and probably as far as we'll ever get.
Right, and that elevated Riverfront Expressway, Bill Bohr and his friend and associate on the battle there was called the Second Battle of New Orleans, was Dick Bumback, and they were successful in leading the charge to make sure that was not built. Otherwise, we'd have an elevated expressway in front of St. Louis Cathedral.
Yeah. They wrote a book with that title, The Second Battle of New Orleans. Since then, there have been many things referred to as the Second Battle of New Orleans. There have been hundreds of second battles of New Orleans since then.
Well, there was one
council people who thought that was a good idea at the time admitted, you know what, we were wrong.
Well, as Errol pointed out, I mean, planners nationwide thought this was a good idea, just to circle inner cities with stuff like that.
It was like when they removed the streetcars along Canal Street. They thought it was a good idea.
Yeah.
They thought it was a good progressive movement to do that.
So now we have to fix that big sinkhole on Canal Street. Okay, Errol, thanks. All right, over to Jeremy now. Legislative action. What's going on? We're getting kind of closer to the end of the regular session.
From the New Orleans sinkhole to the Baton Rouge sinkhole. Right. I just hope we make it through session. The flu has been sweeping through. The Capitol has taken out their appropriations chair, a freshman, a Ways and Means member, and they actually had to close down the House chamber last night and sanitize all surfaces so people can kind of get back to work and feel safe
sounds
again.
like a good thing to have been done over there to sanitize.
You know, like last time we were on here, we talked about how slow things are, how quiet things are, but the next the next week is really going to show us where we're heading. On Monday, the Appropriations Committee will start taking amendments to the budget. I spoke to Chairman Cameron Henry, and he told me that every department will be 6% short of the funding levels targeted by the governor in his proposal, which was already a substantial cut to state government. Right now, the hole is about $600 million. They're going to fully refund funding for TOPS, and they're going to look at the public-private hospital contracts, the safety net hospitals, but the chairman says that he's not going to touch that until the governor gets done with his negotiations with those partners. Also on Monday, the Ways and Means Committee is going to start taking amendments on the construction budget, capital outlay budget. This thing is a mess like it is every year. There's 4 times more projects than there is actual funding. The governor has already implemented more than $1.1 billion in cuts. And what's new about that process this year is that the committee is actually taking testimony from public bodies, NGOs, hearing their reasons for justifying their projects. But they're also learning that some of these projects that got cut by the administration were being progressed or being constructed with local matching money. So the local governments were putting up these dollars hoping that the state dollars would show up on the back end, and now they're left holding the bag, and the Division of Administration didn't know anything about it. So we're going to have to wait and see what Ways and Means does with the construction budget. There are a lot of members who want to put their local projects back in that the governor cut, but you know, that starts an avalanche. Everybody's going to want to put amendments on that bill, and so we're going to have to wait and see if it's going to either be a feeding frenzy or a famine.
And then some other pieces of legislation that are moving through, and particularly one that's of interest here, is moving the RSD schools back under Orleans Parish School Board. Is that moving along?
That is, and really it's cleared more or less every major hurdle. And this is a Senate bill by Karen Carter Peterson. It's been passed by the House, by the Senate. It's been passed by the House. Now the bill's got to go back to the Senate for one concurrence vote. Then it's going to head to the governor's office. And you know, if it is passed into law, and I'm expecting that it will be, local school control could be returned back as soon as 2018, unless they change that date between now and the governor's desk.
But they have the option of going back one more year if somebody's not ready.
Right, as soon as 2018. Right.
And charter operators are sort of on board with this too? Did they sort of sign off and say, okay?
Yeah, they've been involved in the negotiations with this probably since before the session began. There have been moves the last several sessions to try to get the schools back under local control, under a locally elected board.
Right.
And I think after 10, 11 years, the time has come. So.
Okay, so it looks like in 2018 would be the soonest. But the legislation has not gone to the governor's desk yet.
Not yet. It still needs a concurrence vote in the Senate. That'll be next week.
Okay, so next week is something that we really, and then also the special session. Let's touch on that. And the governor wants a special session to come right after the regular.
He does, but he does not want to give out what he believes should be in the special session call or the agenda. Instead, the governor has said he's waiting for a task force to recommend some items. And what's really interesting about this is that task force was created in the first special session to give suggestions in September for the 2017 regular session. And all of a sudden, the governor has charged this committee with this task force with coming up with ideas by May 15th. And right now, you know, the governor is driving that agenda. And so we're expecting to see tax exemptions, eliminating those, rolling them back, itemized deductions for individual income taxpayers, which I think should probably grab the attention of your average citizen and voter. And there's some other talk about a few other things, but those are the most concrete items you can probably expect on that list of recommendations. Conservatives in the House are telling the governor June is too soon. That's actually the headline of a column from the president of Laborde. But the governor dug in. He had a press conference yesterday and said, look, we're not going to find extra money.
Right.
I don't believe we will. The most prudent thing to do is prepare for a second special session.
And he hasn't
right
changed
after
his
the regular.
position on that, so I guess we can expect one then.
Yes.
Okay, all right, Jeremy, thanks a lot. Moving over to Eric now. Eric, you were involved in the story that you all ran this week that really had a lot of reaction, of outrage, of real concern.
And I think opening a lot of eyes, and I think that was the most important thing that came out of that story.
And let's explain it to, if by chance you didn't see the story, Eric was conducting an interview, and it just turned into, ultimately, what he saw was a very violent confrontation. And
where a gun was involved, and it could have gone off, and a little child was standing pretty close, and as were all of us. But it all started out, we've got an initiative at the station called Taking a Stand. And a rapper, a New Orleans rapper I know, named Kay Gates, whose real name is Kwame Gates, had done a documentary called Murder Capital. And he had showed it to me quite some time ago, and I wanted to do something with it, but it was so graphic and so shocking to see some of the things we never see in this city, at least most of us never see. And I wanted to do something. And then after the murder of Will Smith, and there was so much talk about crime in this city, I said, you know what, let's go ahead and do it. So I had called Kwame. I was interviewing him at a studio where he worked on the documentary. And then he brought me to a woman who had been in the news before. Her name is Althea Phillips. And she had six children, 2 daughters, 4 sons. All 4 of her sons were killed in gun violence in the order of their birth. Her firstborn was killed first, so then again, and again. And so as we were leaving her house after a gut-wrenching interview, her nephew is a rapper named Easy Money. And Kwame said, you might want to talk to him. He's got a pretty good story. So there was a lot between her house and a vacant house, and we walked down to the vacant house, sitting on the stoop, with Kwame, the guy named Easy Money, Easy Money's son, his young son, and another rapper, and a couple other people standing around. And we started talking about some of the things going on. And this rapper, Easy Money, who was in a group called the 8-9 Boys, said that he was tired of being stereotyped as a gang, and he said that's what happens sometimes when you're in that rapper world. And he said he had made some bad decisions. He had the gold teeth and all the tattoos, and he said, you know what, I'm rethinking this now that I have a son. I'd kind of like to get rid of the gold teeth, get rid of the tattoos, and kind of change my lifestyle. And then we started talking about guns and why so many people carry guns. And Kwame was asking a question to the 2 guys sitting there, and all of a sudden a guy to our left started yelling all kinds of obscenities and saying that we should not be in this neighborhood, that we were disrespecting him, and it got pretty rough, and we kept trying to interview, and all of a sudden he just went off. And I said, because threats were made. I mean, he said, this is how a boy gets killed. And you're hiding behind the camera, et cetera, et cetera. So I said, look, let's just call this a wrap. And so we're taking the microphones off the guys, and our photographer left the camera on. And the 2 guys we were interviewing, not Kwame, Easy Money and his friend, got up and started talking to the man who was yelling at us, who used to be in their rap group. Well, all of a sudden, I mean, out of nowhere, fists started flying, and then the one guy dragged him over to the side and viciously was putting a beating on him. Then all of a sudden we saw there was a gun. The 2 guys were both reaching for it, and I mean,
that's
it was
frightening.
frightening.
You had to have been frightened.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And the weird thing is, because people said, you know, why did you show this on television? You know, when we got back with the video, we were kind of shaken up. But as we went over it and started showing it, and I said, you know what, this is something that people, I think, need to see. They need to see this. And we put it on, and I mean, it went viral so fast and opened so many eyes. And I got to tell you, most of the response we got, I'd say 90% was positive, saying this is something people need to see.
But there was some criticism,
though. The young boy was standing on the side
yeah,
watching
the
that.
other thing, and that's part of the systemic violence in the city. I just did an interview with the mayor today. It'd be on our 10 o'clock news tonight, and he actually thanked us for doing the story and saying that this really opened the eyes of people, because he said the mayor saying, look, I've been trying to talk about this for years and nobody listened. All of a sudden now they're listening.
Now they're paying attention because they saw it before their very eyes. And your news director Keith Espros explained to the public that this indeed was something that you all are doing because you want to take a stand, you want the public to see it. It was not a ploy, because you did have some folks criticizing, saying it was a ploy.
Well, and the other thing is we could have never known because I was doing a story on violence,
Yeah.
and we could have never known this was going to transpire. And we want this to start a dialogue, and by God, it has started a dialogue.
And also, you guys are continuing in this called taking a stand about the violence in our streets and how the community has to come up and address
And we're
this.
taking this on as a mission, and we told that to the mayor tonight, and the mayor said this is not a question about policing, this is a systemic problem, and it's not something police are going to solve, it's every one of us. He said stop complaining and start doing something to make a difference.
Okay, well, it's a
You
really
know,
a
while that
very
was
strong
going on,
story, but we have to
the
move
lady
on.
who had lost her 4 sons, she was there too, and in the background you could hear her saying, "This is
Yeah,
where
that's
violence
starts. This is where the killing starts.
And it's online if you haven't seen it. You can just go to WWL-TV.com, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure it's online. But we do have to move on to another very important and urgent story, and that's about sea level rise, global warming, and how it's going to affect us.
Right, I'm here with the feel-good story of the week, I suppose. It concerns a new report out that regards Antarctica, and if the global temperatures continue to rise at the pace they are, if temperatures rise 2 degrees Celsius, which is about 3.5 degrees Fahrenheit, it will cause enough sea level rise because of the ice melt to add 3 more feet to what's already expected between sea level rise and the sinking Louisiana Delta, for a total of about 6.5 feet more water headed our way.
And the scary part is people don't want to believe it's true.
Right, and that's because most of us rarely see the river, let alone the coast or the swamps. You know, I think a lot of people in New Orleans, you know, a trip more than 5 miles away from home, you got to pack a lunch.
Well, if you take a look at this kind of scenario, coastal Louisiana, many coastal communities are just submerged. And then with our levee system, where we have some other communities that perhaps will be maintained, but they'll just be a sliver really out there in a body of water. So our state's trying to grapple with this, to wrestle with this whole thing, and they passed in 2012 a master plan. But they've had to really make some changes because of this sea level rise issue.
Right, the master plan, which is now up to $92 billion over 50 years, it was based on a certain expectation of sea level rise. That's already doubled, so that means that they took a couple river diversions downriver in Plaquemines Parish, and those are off the drawing board now. They've determined it's just too little too late down there. There's still 2 river diversions up higher, and the idea is you break open the river, you control it, you allow the sediment to go out, and they think if things go as they're planned and engineered, that by 2061 they'll be building more land in Louisiana than is being lost. But all that's for nothing if temperatures rise, Antarctica melts. Antarctica holds 90% of the world's ice.
And so it could really, if it does melt to that degree, the waters will rise. So what do we do then as a global community to avoid this?
Well, 196 countries got together in Paris at the end of last year and agreed to climate accords, and their goal is to hold the temperatures to no higher than 2 degrees Celsius increase. Whether that can be achieved and how each country goes about it is a totally different story. China signed on to it, India, 2 of the biggest coal-using countries in the world that lead to greenhouse gases.
But the thrust of your story was about the Antarctica angle to it. I mean, that's a part of it that's usually not told in terms of what's happening and what's being done.
Yeah, there's kind of a buffer around Antarctica of softer ice, of more recent ice that's more susceptible to temperature rise. And there's no question in anyone's mind that the global temperatures are rising. The questions come about whether it's man-made or not, but still 97% of the scientists think that it's man-made. So it's the reducing of greenhouse gas emissions.
So it's just another problem that we have to consider when trying to figure out how to save our coast and our coastal communities. Okay, Steve, thanks a lot. Let's go back over to Jeremy now. And it looks like we have a presumptive nominee for the GOP presidential race.
It sure does. And we saw that the after effects of that in Louisiana politics this week as well. We saw a major endorsement come out from the Louisiana Republican Party Chairman Roger Villeray, both the U.S. senators, and almost every single Republican member of the congressional delegation. The holdout was Garrett Graves, congressman from Baton Rouge.
He also believes in global warming, too, so he's kind of a renegade.
Yeah, well, he
was very active with saving the coast.
He's never been one to immediately endorse. I mean, he held out endorsing David Vitter in the primary last year. But, at the same time, there's a Rasmussen Reports poll that came out that had somewhere between 40 and 50% of U.S. likely voters would be least likely to vote for a politician who endorsed either Trump or Clinton. So at least, for Garrett Graves, that poll suggests he may be making a smart move right now. But there's going to be a new poll coming out Monday from JMC Analytics that's going to test Trump, Sanders, and Trump, Clinton. But as of this morning, I looked on Cook Report, and Louisiana's still in the category of being solid red. I know Republicans want to get behind Trump to beat Clinton, but right now it looks like the state's going to remain solid red for Trump or whoever the candidate might be.
So following the Louisiana primary, the GOP Louisiana primary, were there some delegates that were committed to other candidates?
There were, and we saw, I believe it was Rubio's delegates this week came out for Trump.
So they would be free to...
Right.
Okay.
The Clintons have always had pretty good support in Louisiana, though,
Yeah,
like when Bill Clinton ran.
Yeah.
So it's amazing that Trump can kind of turn this around.
Well, it fits
He's amazed a lot of people through this whole cycle.
Yeah, except for the governor's race last year, I mean, the state is still trending red.
And you cannot rule anything out with Donald Trump. No matter how many predictions have been made about Donald Trump, they have almost all been wrong.
That's right.
Nobody thought, what were the odds? Like 50,000 to 1, he'd be as far as he is now.
Yeah, and we're starting to see some electoral college models where, if this happens and this happens, whereas there really wasn't a path forward for a Republican, half a year ago.
And nobody thought there was a path forward when the first 17, when the 17 had announced early on.
No.
And do you think we'll see a third candidate jump in?
Well, who knows?
Who knows? Okay, but quickly, let me have you just touch quickly on our Senate race.
Yeah,
what's that looking like?
Couple big developments. All 8 of the major candidates we saw on one stage earlier this week for the Chemical Association Forum. John Fleming, congressman from Shreveport, became the first U.S. Senate candidate to go up on TV this week. It's running statewide on Fox News channels. It's a bio piece, but there was one line in it that upset retired Air Force Colonel Rob Maness, who ran in the Landrew Cassidy race. That Fleming was talking about how he tried to push Boehner out, and Maness said he didn't push hard enough. And basically, this is the conservative primary that we're going to see. These two guys are trying to out-conservative each other. And the last piece that's worth mentioning about the U.S. Senate race, there's a man named Clay Higgins. He is a former sheriff's deputy in St. Landry Parish. Yep. His videos went viral on the internet. He would cut these Crime Stopper videos, and he would call criminals thugs and pick fights with people who hold their guns sideways, and these videos went viral. Well, he put out a 6-minute YouTube video this week with American flags in the background, eagles flying across, talking about national debt, did everything but announce. It ends up he is looking at the U.S. Senate race. He is officially the wild card right now in the U.S. Senate race.
Okay. Do you think any more will be jumping in after that?
You got to wonder, all of these fields in 4th District up in Shreveport, the 3rd in Lafayette, and this U.S. Senate race. I can't remember seeing fields this big. And what's so amazing is most of these guys are self-funding their campaigns. I think already, just as of the first quarter, I think there's $2.4 million of personal money in these campaigns. Almost, in fact, in the 3rd District, I think out of the 6 or 7, all of them are self-funded except for one.
All right. Okay, Jeremy, we're going to go back over now to Errol. And Kentucky Derby watching. And there are 2 horses that have great interest here in New Orleans.
People always criticize the media for covering politics like a horse race. Well, we got a horse race here, okay?
We're covering like
politics. Tom Benson's got the trump card in this thing. It's an amazing story. Like only 2 years ago, Tom Benson and his wife Gail decided to get into the horse race business. He gave 3 local trainers each a wad of money and said, "Go out and buy a horse." And they came back, and 2 of them got horses that wound up being in the Kentucky Derby tomorrow. Now, earlier in his career, Benson had been in the horse race business briefly, but he got away from it when his son, who was his partner, died. But he's back in it, and it's called GMB Racing. It stands for Gail Marie Benson. And by this time tomorrow, Tom Benson will be able to say that in his career, he had a football team that won the Super Bowl, a basketball team that got into the playoffs last year, not this year, and he had 2 horses that raced the Kentucky Derby. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Anyway, we made up our list. First time ever on Informed Sources, a list of horses to watch. 4 of them, and this is their gate position. Number 4 is Motom. That's one of the GMB horses. The trainer is Tom Amos from New Orleans, the brother of Jim Amos, the former editor of the Times-Picayune. And the odds are 20-1, so he's a little bit of a long shot. He was the last to qualify. Gun Runner is not a local horse, but he ran locally. He won the Louisiana Derby, and so a little bit of prestige. Also, another thing at the fairgrounds called the Risen Star, and his jockey, Florent Giron, is a guy from France, but who raced here at the fairgrounds during the season, and was the fairgrounds winning jockey, and he's at 10-1. Gun Runner won the Louisiana Derby and beaten out the Benson horses by 1. Exaggerator is not a local horse, but the trainer and the jockey, Keith Desermont and Kent Desermont, are both from Louisiana. They're both from Maurice, Louisiana.
What a great story.
Yeah, and actually they're from the suburbs of Maurice. I mean, they're out in the stick, and that's an 8-1 odds. They got the number 11 position. And then we have Tom's Ready, which is the other one, and it's a G&B horse, and Dallas Stewart, who's the other local trainer. So none of the horses have very good odds going for them, but it's just going to be exciting to see. It's 2 horses with the Benson's name in it, and then 2 other horses with really fairgrounds connections.
So who are you betting on?
Oh, gee. I think I'd go in, look like I know, okay? Like Exaggerator. I think he's got the best odds of the things with Louisiana connections.
We won't be betting, but be pulling for Tom's horses.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
Yeah,
30-1 odds. You put down a couple of bucks on that, you can make some money.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, it is time to look ahead. Give us a prediction, Errol.
Well, it's not a prediction, but something to be. But actually, let's do the horse race thing, because no matter what happens tomorrow, there could still be 2 more events in the next few weeks, and that's the Preakness and the Belmont. And so we could see both those horses. And remember, Risen Star, which was the last local horse, Risen Star lost in the Kentucky Derby, but went on to win those next 2 races.
Okay, thanks. Jeremy.
The latest additions to Louisiana's medical marijuana law are coming together. Just a few more steps left in the process. It looks like it could end up passing for marijuana in an oil form for people with serious conditions.
And it sort of expands the conditions, too,
It expands it, right.
Had been passed last year.
We'll see another vote next week on that.
Okay. All right, Jeremy. Thanks. Eric.
It'll be worth watching our story with the mayor tonight at 10 o'clock on Channel 4. And no matter what you think about the mayor or what he has done or does not do with policing and crime, you can see the passion he has in trying to solve this systemic problem, not the policing problem, the systemic problem in some of the neighborhoods in this town, and the cry for all of us to get involved, all of us to do something.
It is not an easy fix.
No,
it does take
and
a
he
community.
says that it's not an easy fix, but it will take the entire community.
Right. All right, Eric. Thanks. Steve.
I think next week we'll hear a resolution from the National Labor Relations Board on whether the teachers at Lusher Charter School will get to vote on unionization. It's a very tense and very contentious situation over there.
All righty, Steve. Thanks. Thanks, you guys, for being here. Thank you all for watching. And, of course, we want to see you again next week for Informed Sources. Have a good evening.